Hi everyone. I know you've watched the video on what is a radian, and I couldn't have done that video any better myself, which is why that wasn't me you were watching. But just to review what that video went over, if we are dealing with our circle split into quarter sections across 180 degrees, and we now know why 180 degrees is pi radians, and we know why 360 degrees is 2 pi radians, and we understand where that comes from and why it's happening. Now we can just make sure we understand the radian measures themselves. So again, with the quarters, 0/4 of pi is 0 radians. 1/4 of pi is pi over 4 radians. 2/4 of pi, or 1/2 of pi, is pi over 2 radians. 3/4 of pi is 3 pi over 4. 4/4 of pi is like taking 1 times pi, so that's just pi. 5/4 pi is just 5 pi over 4. 6/4 of pi, of course, is 6 pi over 4, but we can reduce that to 3 pi over 2. 7 pi over 4 is just that. And then 8/4, or 2 times pi, is just 2 pi. So when I go to my circle that we were studying earlier that already has the degree measures on it, we can now add in those radians. So 0 degrees hooks up with 0 radians. 45 degrees we now know is pi over 4 radians. 90 degrees we now know to be pi over 2 radians. 135 degrees, 3 pi over 4 radians. And 180 degrees is just going to be pi radians. Now you can kind of see the progression. So here we go. 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4. Keeping that going, here's 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, which reduces to 3 pi over 2, 7 pi over 4, and 8 pi over 4, or 2 pi. Fantastic. Okay, now let's go to the situation where we divide the top half of the circle into 6 equal sections. So I've done that here for you. So let's just go through it. 0/6 pi is 0 radians. 1/6 pi, pi over 6. 2/6 pi reduces to pi over 3. 3/6 pi reduces to pi over 2. 4/6 pi, 2/3, or 2 pi over 3. 5/6 pi, 5 pi over 6. Here we have pi. And it just keeps on going. Here's 7 pi over 6. Here is 4 pi over 3 when we reduce 8 over 6 to 4/3. Here is 3 pi over 2. Here is 5 pi over 3. 11 pi over 6 doesn't reduce. And here's our 2 pi. Okay, taking the circle we created earlier with our degree measures, we can now put our radians on there. So 0 degrees, 0 radians. 30 degrees, pi over 6 radians. 60 degrees, pi over 3 radians. 90 degrees, pi over 2. 120 degrees, 2 pi over 3. 150 degrees, I hesitated for a second because I was thinking of the 45 degrees. 150 degrees, 5 pi over 6. I was about to go to this guy right here, but I know I don't have those on here yet. Okay, 180 degrees we know is pi. 210 we calculated as 7 pi over 6. 240 was our 4 pi over 3. Then our 3 pi over 2. And then our 5 pi over 3. Our 11 pi over 6. And finally, our 2 pi radians. Okay, so you can see that there. And if you look at the pattern here, count by 6th. Here we go. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6. Here's 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6, 12 pi over 6. Okay, Now let me lay this down over top here to create our full circle. It's a little jumbled there because I wrote things at different spots, but you get the idea. So your full circle with degrees, your full circle with your radians. And hopefully these strategies are going to help you to memorize your unit circle, both degrees and radians. And in the next video and the final video, we're going to talk about the coordinates at the various locations around the unit circle, why they are what they are, and how it relates to cosine of theta and sine of theta. Thanks for watching.